that describes what we found after looking at the code a little further on this. The question that was raised at the last meeting was, what is the actual setback required for, and I have the plat pulled up on the screen, and I also have it in front of you. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do. Commissioner Elmer is on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so is 3 enough for a quorum?
We have four.
Four, sorry. Sorry, Rudy.
That's okay.
So we have a quorum. Okay. If you look at lots 19 and 16, the question came up about whether the setback was enough along the south property lines where they abut Wilson Street. Those are the side lot lines. By definition, the front lot line is the narrow dimension lot line. So the lot lines along Harrison Street are the front lot lines. So there is a memo in here.
Last page, guys. And Commissioner Elmer, if you have your packet, it's page 11 of the packet.
Thank you. Okay. So after thorough review of the zoning and subdivision regulations, staff has determined that lots 9 and 16 are subject to the following requirements. As corner lots, the side yard is set at 10 feet per section 6602. This is currently reflected on the preliminary plat. The requirement that front yards must comply with Article 24, footnote number 1, Table 6.3 does not apply in this case, as the front yard for both lots face Harrison Street and not Wilson Street. Harrison Street is classified as a local residential street, not an arterial. For reference, the stipulation for front yard setbacks as per section 24201B1C1 is that, quote, no building or structure which fronts or sides on an arterial street should be located nearer to the center of the arterial street right of way than the sum of the required front yard plus 60 feet. So if you look at what that would require, if you think about what that would require, it would be the sum of the required front yard plus 60 feet. So if the front yard is required, like the baseline requirement for a front yard is 20 feet, that would mean that the front yard could be 80 feet. That would render this lot unbuildable if that was the case. There was another example of a lot, if you're familiar with the codes, we recently approved a replat of 2 lots in the codes at the corner of Elderberry and Wilson, and those are narrow lots. That lot would be unbuildable with that larger setback. And I have a more thorough analysis in my notes, and I'm gonna, if you can give me a minute, I want to read that right now again.
Okay.
That's okay, because Commissioner Crowley brought up the question before the meeting today. Wanted me to take a little closer look at this.
Great.
So if you can just give me 5 minutes, I won't need 5 minutes.
Mike.
Yes.
Mike, this is Commissioner Erler. I know you have your mic on the table in front of you.
Thank you. Is that better?
Oh, amazingly better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I am
You
sorry.
sounded like you were
I
in a
do that all
box.
the time. I neglect to use the mic. So I'm Commissioner Elmer. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to read some background on this, if that's okay.
I'll take that minute to go get a little bit of water.
So the setbacks are covered in the zoning code under Article 6, Table 6.3. And specifically in that table, it says a side setback of 6 feet is required. That does not pertain to a corner lot. So there's a footnote to that 6-foot side setback required, which states, where a lot is located at the intersection of 2 or more streets, there shall be a setback from the side street of the lot of 1/2 of the required front yard setback, except that when lots have been platted facing said side street, the setback from the side street shall be no less than 5 feet less than the required front yard setback of the lots on the same street. 1/2 the required front yard setback is 10 feet. So that's where the 10-foot setback required comes from, excuse me. The potential source of the confusion is the language in Article 24. But that text does not apply to the lot lines along Wilson. Article 24 is the supplemental standards article in the zoning regulations, and it covers exceptions and other circumstances that might dictate other requirements. So under that section, let me see what it says here. The source of the confusion is that exception in Article 24 states both the front and side. And that's why there was some confusion at the last meeting. I raised the question about that. Somebody else raised a question about it, and then I further questioned it because of that. But if you go back to the footnote, it applies to front yards. So, as the zoning administrator, by default, at this point, my conclusion is that the 10-foot minimum setback applies. The question has been raised today about whether that's correct, because in the past, we've approved plats with setback lines for corner lots that are the same on the front as they are on the side. In some cases, those lots are a little more ambiguous about what the front lot line is, and I'm thinking about some lots in Westwood Circle, for example. There might be other examples. That might be why there's a setback line in those cases that's the same for the side as the front, because there's not a clear side and front. In this case, there's a clear front. There might have been other reasons for imposing a larger setback along the side adjoining a street. I don't know all the history. I've been with the city now for 3 months. I only know what I've been able to research and what I can interpret from the current zoning code. And working with Jennifer Reinhardt, who is the planner on this plat, we agreed that a 10-foot setback is what is required by the code. I'm going to go back to those lots in the Coves at the corner of Elderberry and Wilson. I did not have the time to pull the site plan for those, but I believe that the 10-foot setback was applied in that case. They might be further away from Wilson than that, or that house might be further away from Wilson than 10 feet. But if we were to apply this requirement that a front setback on an arterial be 60 feet plus the setback for the lot, I know that lot would not be buildable. My own opinion is that 10 feet in some cases is not appropriate. For one, if it's a side lot line and it is adjacent to the front lot lines of other lots, those houses are going to be set back further than 10 feet. So it's going to be it's going to be out of alignment. It might not be the best situation, might not be the best outcome. I believe the Planning Commission, if they want to impose a larger setback on these lots, they can. What should also be considered, however, is this plat has been through the process, it's been under review. I think if there was a substantially larger setback, it could make it difficult for the plat to be approved in the manner it is, because those corner lots it could be difficult to build on those corner lots. But that's where we land on this. That's staff's position on this. Based on what we found, we recommend the plat be approved. If the commission wants to discuss a larger setback, they can do that. Maybe there's some adjustments that can be made to the plat. What staff would encourage the Planning Commission to do today is to make a decision so this can go forward. Thank you.
Discussion?
I have a question, and I know Commissioner Crowley is going to dive in as well, but the way that I interpret what you just read, you had mentioned somewhere there that that side lot is supposed to be half of the front. Well, that'd be 12 and a half, not 10.
Is the front 25?
According to this, I'm
Yeah.
looking specifically at this plat. 12 and a half works, right? In my opinion.
Well, everything, if I did a little research before this, and every single plat that I looked at, the double frontage streets were 25 foot. Whether it's two streets or 3 streets, it was 25 foot all the way around.
All the way around.
If you drive around to subdivisions, and I'm talking about subdivisions that things have been done in recent years, last 15, 20 years. For instance, you drive down the street south of the middle school, I think it's 13th Street, and you look at all those side yards going all the way out to Eisenhower, all those houses are sitting far away from 13th Street. They're not 10 foot. And you, like I said, you drive around and you look at all the newer style houses, there's none of them that are this close. My other comment was, and it's kind of hard to tell by looking at this little piece of paper, but when I was looking at it on my computer and you can zoom in, this offset is real close to the PC of the curve there. When you look at an aerial photograph and look at the houses across the street to the west, I almost wonder where these houses are even going to set in relationship to the stop sign there. They're probably going to set closer to the road than the stop sign even. So if you got cars there at the stop sign that are trying to turn left or right, potentially these houses are going to block the view from cars that are setting at the stop sign.
And I agree with you, Commissioner. One of the things is line of sight, especially if
Yep.
you're taking and you're in a smaller vehicle. With a smaller, even if you're in a large vehicle, you're going to have difficulty, 4-wheel drives. But if you're in a small vehicle, which most everybody has nowadays for economics, and you have people who are parked out on the street, and we all know that if you can't see to the left or to the right, you're going to pull out a little bit, and then you're taking the chance and risking yourself to do that. And having these setbacks are there for a reason, so that it's not only it's to protect the community and property and things like that.
Mr. Chairman, can I offer a suggestion to address that particular question?
Director Hall?
The line of sight. There is a sight distance triangle requirement. I don't know where it is exactly in our code, but the way the sight distance triangle is measured, it's a triangle. It's the shape of a triangle. And I believe what you do is you take the intersection of the streets, you go down the center line, measure 75 feet in both directions, and then that forms the sides of the triangle. And then you connect those two endpoints, and that forms the hypotenuse of the triangle. I think you could add a note to the plat that states that, I don't even know if it's necessary, I think we'd check it anyway, but if it addresses that question, states that site plans and placement of buildings, homes, must comply with the site distance triangle requirements.
Okay.
That might not address all the concerns, but that addresses that site distance concern.
And it would put it clearly, it would clarify clearly to the applicant or whoever is doing the designing of the plat, it would give clearer direction, because as we know, if it's not written, most generally, they're not going to go look it up. If they're not told, then they're not going to do it. And I think as an option, because right at this time, I apologize, I didn't make it to the last meeting, but with the information that I see in front of me, since we're introducing that as an option, we don't have that already mapped out on the plan to even know what that 75-foot triangle would even look like on a corner lot with the streets that intersect. Just having it clearly stated, I think, would be a benefit to everybody.
I think I would agree, because if I understood when Director Hall read the note, the footnote, the most we could require the side yard setbacks to be moved back would be 2.5 feet. We could go to, so then my question would be, do we have the authority to say that it needs to be deeper? Can we overrule the subdivision regulations? And I'm in favor of the site triangle, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm just saying, do we have the authority to overrule, if it says 12.5 feet, do we have the authority to make it more?
I think we're overlooking something somewhere. I also had a conversation with a surveyor that had done lots of surveys and plats in this town before this meeting, and he said there is something somewhere in there that talks about double frontage streets requiring 25 foot, because if there's nothing in there that says that, I question why all the subdivisions that have been platted around here have laid it out like that, because they're just costing themselves money with the ground. So I don't know. I'm a little uncomfortable with this because this is not the norm. And especially on Wilson Street, that's a very busy street, and you got lots of cars going up and down Milner with the school.
Well, and at shift change times, you've got lots of cars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only thing, I guess, just as a follow-up on that, if you did a 25-foot setback, if we could do a 25-foot setback, and if we did do a 25-foot setback, this is R1,
Yes.
so we'd have a 72, we'd have a 32-foot setback combined, side yard on the interior side and side yard on the street side. That would leave a 34-foot building envelope, width building envelope. That's not a very big building envelope to try to build a single family.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, in the R1 district, the minimum setback is 20 feet along a local street. Unless it's the garage. If the garage is closer to the street than the house, it's the closest part of the house to the street, then that setback is 25.
Can you say that one more time?
So-
Everything you just said?
So I'm looking at the zoning code right now.
Mhm.
In the R1 district, the minimum setback is 20 feet. If it's a garage, it's closer to the, like, a lot of homes are built so the garage is closer to, the attached garage is closer to the front lot line than the habitable space of the home. In that case, the setback is 25 feet. 25 feet for a garage. The baseline setback is 20, just to clarify. So half 20 is 10. It doesn't, there's something in the subdivision code that addresses setback lines. I don't think it's going to say specifically that you can override what what is in the zoning code, I think you do have the authority to do that if that's something you want to do.
Wait, you just said, it says, word for word, what you just said was the street setback is 20 feet. You didn't
Correct.
say front, you said street. So if that's the case, the street is 20 on, but there's two streets here. Because you didn't say front, you said street.
I might have said that. So section 602, which is the standards, these are dimensional standards for the R1, R2, and R3 districts. There's a table 6.3, for the minimum yard regulations. For the R1 district, under front, it says 20 feet. There are footnotes. First footnote says, front yards on arterial or collector streets shall comply with Article 24. Because it says front yards, that's why we don't think that other requirement applies that we talked about. Footnote 5 states this exactly. In the R1 and R2 districts, where a garage is the same distance from the street as is the residence, the garage is subject to the 20-foot setback. Provided, however, where a garage is closer to the street than is the residence, the minimum front yard setback is 25 feet. I said street because that's where you'd measure the setback. But it specifically states the front. Now, I've worked in other jurisdictions where they say you treat the side adjoining the street the same as you treat the front. It doesn't say that in our code.
And Mike,
The front lot line is the narrow dimension of the lot.
Commissioner Elmer?
so earlier in discussion, whenever you're presenting information, I was taking some notes, and I thought I had heard that because of this being a corner lot and at intersections, that there was a different requirement because of the multiple different intersections. Did I hear that wrong?
There was some question about that, Commissioner Elmer, because of the discussion in the previous meeting. What we were asked to do at the end of the previous meeting is go back and take a look at the code and really see what it states and our interpretation of it. And so what we concluded is that the front, that exceptional setback that applies to arterials and collectors, because Wilson is an arterial, it does not apply to the lot line that is along Wilson in this case, because that's the side lot line for these lots. And the setback, based on what I just read, is half the front setback. Half the front setback is 20. Now, that could leave some room for interpretation also, because the setback line they have on the plat, I think they have it at 25 feet. But I would say that front setback is what's required by the zoning code. And so that side setback along Wilson, in our interpretation, is 10 feet. The minimum setback is 10 feet.
That's the minimum. That doesn't mean,
That's the minimum required
That it
by the
would be the-
zoning code. So,
right, but that doesn't mean that it would be the maximum. The least amount of setback would be 10 feet. That doesn't mean that we couldn't request for it to be greater than. That would just be the minimum.
I would say under normal, typical circumstances, you would follow what's in the zoning code. But there is something in the subdivision code that references setback lines, and if you can give me a minute, I can find it. I believe
Sure.
it's in I think it's in Article 4 of the subdivision code.
So for my clarification, it's 25 feet if a garage is attached and the garage is on the street side?
If
Is
the
that
garage
the
protrudes from the front elevation is what I get, right? So if the
Sits in front of the
garage kicks
house.
out from the front of the house, well, I don't understand
I
this.
don't
but
understand that.
I don't know why
garage-
there'd be a difference.
I
Shouldn't
don't
be.
either, but, because that even makes the that even makes the garage more prominent. Yeah, I don't understand that, but that's something that part we can address maybe at a different.
I guess that goes back to the sight line view. If it's protruding out, they want to make it 25 feet, so it sits further back so that you can see past it.
But what's the difference between that and the house wall?
Yeah.
They're both walls.
Also, the only, you could move the house up, if you just move the front fascia of the house up, you can move the whole thing. It doesn't make any
I
sense.
agree. I
Doesn't make
agree.
any sense.
They're both walls you can't see
Yeah.
through.
Right.
I have my own thoughts about that. I think most people would agree that the facade of a house is more attractive if the garage does not stick out in front of the rest of the facade of the house. And so that might be an incentive to design it in a way so the habitable space is closer to the street than the garage, or the porch is closer to the street than the garage.
Yeah. Okay, where are we still searching for answers, or?
You know, if someone could do a search on a phone, that might not be that easy to do.
What are we searching for?
I'm searching for, there's a reference to setback lines. And I recall that all it states in the subdivision code, here we go. I just found it. Front building or setback lines shall be shown on the final plat for all lots in the subdivision and shall not be less than the setbacks required by the zoning regulations or any other regulation adopted by the governing body. The greater setback requirement shall govern. So what that paragraph is saying is that, first of all, it requires that setback lines be shown on a plat.
Yes.
And we talked about why that's kind of problematic, right? But that's what it states. And it just says that the setback lines shall not be less than the setbacks required by the zoning regulations. It does not say they can't be more. So I believe, in my opinion, you can impose a larger setback. I think we haven't even heard from the applicant today about all this, and that's important to hear from them about how that would work for them.
Okay.
I think that was good information to know. Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome.
Is the applicant on the Zoom call?
Yes, we are.
Your thoughts to the discussion so far?
Yeah, this has been the MHS. I guess a couple of things that I would speak to a little bit is, so I do agree with Mike's interpretation with the 10-foot setback, or being half the front setback there for the side along Wilson Street. If we were to increase that setback, that would produce some burden on the developer. I think the last time we discussed it, we could go to a 15-foot setback and still make the house plan that we have work on the lot and not make it unbuildable. The other thing, though, that I would state is that when you look at the right-of-way along Wilson Street and you look at the subdivision that's just south of there, the right-of-way portion from the center line of Wilson to that subdivision is only 30 foot wide. And then they have a 20-foot setback off of that right-of-way. So basically setting it 50 foot from the center line of the roadway, all the backs of those houses. If you look at what we'll be putting in the structures that will face Harrison Street, there's a 38.5 foot setback to the right-of-way to the north of Wilson. And then you add our 10-foot setback by code, that would produce, the 48.5 foot distance to the center line. So we basically, where we'd be setting our houses would be almost identical, just 1.5 foot different than where all the existing houses are to the south, that are just, along Wilson Street there.
With the surveying work that you've done there, do you have something to show? When you say those offset, that the offset there on the south is 20 foot, do you have something that shows that? Or Mike, how easily can you pull up that plat to the south? I'd just like to see what.
I don't believe we have the capability of accessing our GIS map from here.
I don't think the GIS map would show offsets or show any kind of setbacks or anything like that. I'm just wondering I'd like to see a copy of that plat just to see what that setback is.
Yeah, and I don't have access to it right now. I'd have to identify the name of the plat and pull it. We might be able to do that if you want to, maybe if you want to recess for 10 minutes.
I think
Well, we
that's
can't
Arrowhead
recess for
Edition.
10 minutes, we'll lose a quorum. We're going to lose our quorum.
Okay.
I guess, well, I for me, I don't know. I know I'm not supposed to take economics into account in my role as a planning commissioner, but if we require additional setbacks, we're going to create unbuildable lots. We've already got 2 unbuildable lots in this subdivision for drainage. So at some point, at some point economically, this subdivision won't make sense for the developer. Now, that doesn't mean that we should just go blindly forward, but we do need housing. We're talking about, at the maximum, 10 feet of difference between what's proposed and what we can do. So quickly, I think we need to work out some type of a compromise. We've talked about the site triangle distances. That could be added as a number 5 on the notes, on the plat. That could be pretty easily addressed, I think. But do we feel strongly enough that we want to create? They may not be unbuildable, but what can go on there may be dramatically, the choices may be dramatically reduced. And I don't know whether these guys have a prescription that they use for their floor plans, or if they have a wide variety. I don't know that. I don't know that needs to be part of my discussion, but those are just the thoughts that are going through my head.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I think I heard Ben Ellis say is that they could probably live with a 15-foot setback. I'm not sure that's what he said. He probably needs to confirm that. I think the other question is, can adjustments be made to the design so the lots are narrower than they are, the other ones, not the corner lots? Right now, most of those lots are 56 feet or 55 feet wide, not real wide. So I don't think there's a lot of give there, but those are probably some options that he can think about.
There's a proposed one-way street. Solve a problem here and have the access out on Grant.
I don't think that would make a difference because these are
You're still going to
side
have problems
lots.
at Milner.
Yeah.
These are still going to be side lot lines. And I wouldn't recommend, you mean a cul-de-sac? One-way street.
So to address a question of the applicant, did you say that in fact on these 2 lots number 9 and 16, that a 15-foot setback wouldn't keep you from building on those lots? Did Director Hall understand that correctly?
Yes, that's correct. So I think we'd be kind of meeting in the middle there with the minimum 10-foot setback that's by zoning code, and the front setback, that's 20 foot if we put in a 15-foot setback.
Does that meet is that a compromise that commissioners can live with?
Mike, are you 100% confident in what you found in your answer, that we're not creating something here that we shouldn't be creating? Because again, I go back to, I would like to see what the setback is to the south. I would like to see that. And what's the possibility of putting this off till tomorrow or next week? I mean, not waiting 2 more weeks, but just to get a little bit more information.
What I can tell you is I did a word search before I came down for corner lots. And I can tell you what the references are, and they don't speak to this. They don't speak to the setback. There are probably 6 places in the zoning code that use the word corner lot. And they don't shed any light on it. So I'm pretty confident. I don't mind looking at more information. But I think that given some of the, we just approved a permit recently for the corner lot at Elderberry and Wilson. And I didn't research that permit before I came down. But I know that's a pretty narrow lot. And I don't think it meets the 25, I don't think it's set back 25 feet. And I think as far as the outcome of this, if you end up with a house that's set back 15 feet, they're not going to be taking access from Wilson.
Yeah, it's not permissible to put a driveway onto an arterial, is it?
I don't think there's a expressed or explicit prohibition against it. It's discouraged. I mean, that is something else you could put on here as a note. No access, no vehicular access from Wilson, if that's a concern.
Commissioner Elmer, what's your thoughts on this? As soon as you get unmuted.
I've been going through, hi, sorry, I was trying to unmute. I've been going through the information and trying to, I've got the site plan in front of me on my big screen, and I've got the zoning code in front of me, scanning through. It's unfortunate that you can't do a word search with a paper document because, as Mike was saying, you know, that corner lots were discussed only once or twice. I do feel, as Commissioner Crowley, that if we don't feel comfortable making a decision today, why are we making a decision? Do you need more information? Is it our responsibility to go and dig into it further, or is it something that the city is going to take and provide to us? And if it is, then what questions do we have for the city for them to get back to us on? Those are my thoughts. Whenever I'm taking it and looking at what distance has been discussed prior to today that would be acceptable for the commission. I know we're talking 10 feet, now we're talking 15 feet. What is it that has been discussed so that I myself can make an educated decision in the future, because this is not public, this is just a study session. So what is it that I need to know that would help me with the determination moving forward with a decision? Because right now I'm looking at if they're conceding to 15 feet, is that something that we accept, or do we need more information? Does that help or confuse things?
I guess I would ask you, what more information would you need? What question would you have on that?
I myself don't have any additional questions. I thought Commissioner Crowley was asking for more information. For me, actually, if I needed more additional, would be that 75-foot triangular. Where does that come into play with the intersections that we have, and what would the setbacks be at that point? Because it may be greater than 15 feet.
And I'll just add, if it is, it is. But it's just the triangle It wouldn't be the entire length of the lot.
Right.
So
In
it
the
would,
way-
it would only make sure that there's not a obstruction to sight at the corner.
Which for me, that's one reason why I would say, in which you were saying to add it as another bullet, both to the site plan and for the development aspect of it, is that if it is greater than 15 feet, then we would be requiring them to have that setback greater than 15 feet. But if it's less than 15 feet, then we need to make that decision of, do we accept it at 15 feet?
To clarify something, the setback created by the site triangle would only apply to that portion of the lot that's affected by the site triangle. So the 15 feet could be further back in the lot. It might be that they'd have to put something in there that had a porch that was offset to meet the triangle. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's going to be a problem, what little I know about site triangles, but it could very well be. So
I think just if I might just add another suggestion or question. So if we find out something is a certain way on the plat to the south, I don't know if that would change the decision. Because it's either, with this plat, you don't necessarily want to impose any more than what the zoning regulations require you to impose. 15 feet works for the developer in this case. If we find out the setback is 20 feet on those other lots, and that lot, if it's, the double frontage lot is when you have the front lot line joins or abuts the street, and the rear lot line abuts the street. And on each one of those setbacks, they're going to be the same as the front setback. So it doesn't necessarily answer the question about what is appropriate for a side setback.
Can I ask the developer a question again? You mentioned that the setback on the south, that you knew what that setback was. How do you know what that setback is? Do you have something showing us?
Yeah, through our research, we had the plat pulled up. I don't have a very clear copy that I could probably share, but we have it in the research that we did when we completed the survey.
So you have it in front of you, and and you can see what the setback is?
Yeah, so I can't make out like any kind of note on the setback itself, but it lists the it's the R1 zoning, which would be the 20-foot setback along the rear, and that's kind of what we're basing that off of. And I did kind of a measurement on the plat that I had with the scale, and that's what it came out to be.
But you can't, I want to make sure I'm understanding, you can't read on the plat anywhere that it says 20 feet?
Yeah, it's too blurry for me to read
Okay.
the actual number that lists the building setback. So we utilized the zoning and then a scale to measure what that was.
Well, if you just scale this drawing that's in front of us, if you're correct in saying the 75-foot rule, if you scale 75 foot on this drawing, it barely even clips the corner of the lot.
Mm-hmm.
So a 75-foot triangle, in my opinion, is not going to do anything.
okay, so Commissioner Elmer, we're going to lose Commissioner Elmer. I guess we can continue the discussion, but I certainly hope. Have we looked into the ability to have a special? Have you looked just in your research into our ability to have a special call meeting? So we don't. When would our next scheduled meeting be? July 13th. So that's 2 weeks. I'm hesitant to delay this because I guess from a practical standpoint, are we going to be arbitrary on every plat that we have as opposed to following the zoning guidelines? Because it's pretty clear to me, Director Hall's done a lot of research. Director Hall's comfortable that the 10-foot setback is allowable under our current zoning regulations and subdivision regulations. The developer has said, we'll do an extra 5 feet if you so desire. So I guess what else do we hope to accomplish? Because what's been done in the past, maybe that's been done, I mean, I don't know why that's been done, but if he's searched the regulations and that's not in, he's confident that that's not in the regulations, what are we gonna do then?
I understand what you're saying, I agree, that's where I'm torn, I agree.
I agree, but what this also, I think we've uncovered is actually 12 and a half feet, because what it is, it's half of the front. And in these particular lots, they're 25-foot setbacks, which is gonna bring us to 12 and a half. They're in agreement to do 15.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm comfortable with them saying they can do 15 on those two lots. I would vote for a motion that said that we amend it to put the wording in there on the site triangle, and then we amend it to say that the building setback on Wilson will be 15 feet, and we amend it to say that there will be no ingress or egress from Wilson Street to the lots. We add those three things, and I'm comfortable with that. Commissioner Elmer, your thoughts?
My thoughts, was there something, I believe that, I was looking at things whenever, he was talking, but Mike, was there something that you were saying that we could request for the builder or require for the builder to make it to where, that 25-foot, I think it was like the location of the garage, can we have them address it to where the house is the more prominent versus the garage?
I wouldn't recommend we do that at this point. That's
Okay.
That's pretty, we haven't discussed that with the developer. Unless the developer's okay with that, but that would be, I think that would be a little bit more than what we've done in the past. I think it'd be extraordinary, exceptional, and not
Sure,
necessarily.
that's
in a good way.
understandable.
I understand, I get that. I think it really affects the aesthetics of the subdivision when the garages are not
Well-
projecting beyond a facade, but it's not really there's not really a policy directive to do that, and there's nothing in the
Sure.
zoning code to do that.
Okay, that's fine. I just, my thoughts behind that was because of the fact, and I'm gonna have to hop off. My thoughts behind that was because of the fact, if the garage is set back slightly further from the house versus it being protruding, then the vehicle backing out onto that corner would have a possible clearer line of sight. Right, I don't know.
Commissioner Elder, if I may, our intention is to have the garage set back a little bit from the frontage of the building,
Hey there, welcome back.
Okay, good, thank you.
to answer that concern.
For the sake of a quorum, I'm going to ask, do we have a motion to approve this with the conditions that we've discussed?
This is Commissioner Elmer. I do want to put a motion forward to approve with the additions that we've added. Can you list those off again really quick?
As I understand them, and and somebody interrupt me if I'm wrong. One would be to include language dealing with the site triangle. Two would be an adjustment to the side yard setbacks on lots 9 and 16 from 10 feet to 15 feet. And 3 would be language to prohibit driveway entrances onto Wilson Street. And that would be 5, 6, and 7, and I don't care which order they go in, but that would be notes 5, 6, and 7.
And Mr. Chairman, just really quickly, I just read this, there is already a note that prohibits access, vehicular access off of Wilson.
And which one is that?
That's note number 2.
Okay, all right, so we'd
Strike
only
that.
need the setback note and the site triangle note. So we'd need 2 notes then instead of 3. And you've made that motion?
I agree with that motion, and I would like to move forward with it.
Okay. Motion's been made by Commissioner Elmer. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been made, seconded by Commissioner Maines. Would you call the roll?
Vice Chairperson Monica is absent. Member Maines,
Yes.
Member Stress McBean is absent. Member Elmer,
Yes,
Member Crowley,
Yes.
Chairperson Lantis,
Yes.
and Member Kane is absent.
Thank you. It passes. Commissioner Elmer, thank you very much for sticking with us so we could get this moved forward. I appreciate all the discussion, and I think that's all we have.
thank you all. I'm going to hop off.
All right, thank you. Guys, this is good discussion, and we're finding some things, I think, and I hope the director's making notes on these things, so at some point we can suggest, we can have action in this group to move forward to the city commission to make some changes when it concerns front yard setbacks on the plat, when it concerns side yard setbacks on an arterial. Those are things that we need, I think, to certainly address. And so I appreciate all the good comments, and I appreciate us coming to a compromise that allows the developer to move forward. So, Director Hall, do you have anything additional to add today?
Well, we have this on the agenda, but it was something that Vice Chairman Winika requested, was an update on the South Princeton TIF district. Perhaps I can provide a more detailed update when he's here.
Okay.
So I can just briefly say that there was some discussion about doing a sidewalk project using the proceeds of the tax increment finance district. And that process has never really come to a close. There was some discussion of it. There were some cost estimates. So just to clarify, when a tax increment finance district is created, there's a fund established, and the tax increment revenues go into that fund, and that those funds can be used for eligible expenses, and a sidewalk would be an eligible expense. And there's been a cost estimate, but it would have to be designed. You would have to have a civil engineer design the sidewalk. It's a substantial project, so it really hasn't gotten to that point. But I can provide a little more information at the next meeting. I think the other thing, too, is we don't have anything for the July 13th agenda at this point. Unless you want us to bring something back, or if you want something to be placed on the agenda, we don't have a project, we don't have a planning case for the agenda.
I think that would be your call. If we have something come up that we need to have a meeting, I wouldn't publish yet that we've canceled that meeting.
Okay.
I think I would wait. Don't you all think that that's a right thing to do? So wait a little bit to see if anything does come up that we need to act on. For instance, if on the 6th, the city commission would refer the duplex back to us, we'd
Good
need to
point.
have a meeting for that.
That's a good point. Yep.
So I would say don't cancel it yet, but we can all sort of have notes that we may not have a meeting on the 13th.
And just so everybody knows, so if you haven't been following, the conditional use permit for 809 South Willow, Planning Commission held a hearing, recommended that it not be approved. It was not a unanimous vote, it was 4-1, I believe. That's been presented to the City Commission at 2 study sessions. They are in a position to make a decision at their next meeting, which is next Wednesday, I believe. And something that was discussed as an option is if they feel it needs to be looked at again by the Planning Commission, they could send it back to the Planning Commission to review it again. They could also just make a decision at the meeting, but there is a possibility it could come back to the Planning Commission.
Okay, and now, any other new business? Announcements. Next regularly scheduled planning commission would be July 13th, if we have one. The next regularly scheduled planning commission study session would be July 28th, if we have one. I think we have a motion to